Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'd like to present a kind of unique haul I got recently in the mail. This is what I'm calling my Boom Studios comic book haul. A big thank you to all our friends over at Boom Studios for sending us these books. I really can't wait to continue to review them on the channel. And to that end, you might have seen me review a couple of these books already, and I'm happy to announce I will review the rest on the channel in the forthcoming weeks for those interested. Boom Studios is a comic book publisher that's been around for some time now. I was first introduced to them in the pages of Irredeemable and Something is Killing the Children. I know they have a lot of other beloved comic book hits, and some of them are on this very video. I really can't wait to talk about them. And with that said, let's go ahead and jump in and see what Boom went ahead and sent over. First on the list today, we have Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, Volume 1, Love in the Wasteland by Jason Aaron. This, of course, came from Boom Studios and is a standard-sized trade paperback edition. Now, this trade paperback includes, I think, the first 4 or 5 issues of this series. At the time of this recording, this series has ended. I think it went across 3 paperback volumes, and I believe they solicited a hardcover collection that should be coming out next year in 2025. So what is Once Upon a Time at the End of the World? Well, that's a fantastic question, and honestly, I had the very same question. It's basically a story set in a dystopian wasteland-like future, but it's also a mix of kind of a young love story. Those genres seem really divergent, and yet how they blend and juxtapose together in this Jason Aaron series, I think is honestly kind of a masterstroke. This blending of genre and tone is not one I've encountered frequently in this medium, and I was delighted from ear to ear as I was making my way through most of this book. We basically have a young woman who's basically rowing across a sea of kind of trash and stuff in this city. She makes her way as this boat begins to kind of capsize to essentially the outer reaches of a skyscraper in this dilapidated city. We basically have a young man who's sort of watching over this skyscraper. It's his home. He admits her inside, feeds her, and ultimately they find out they come from very different kinds of worlds. The young woman is part of a unique group that kind of ranges and ravages throughout the wasteland, and he has been sort of sheltered most of his life. He's a really kind of genius inventor, but he's been largely sheltered from the world outside of his building. And yet they go ahead and team up and leave this building together to travel the wasteland. Where they go from there, though, I'll leave up to you. I'm not going to spoil in this video, but along the way they begin to kind of befriend one another and ultimately find perhaps something more within their relationship. And that is what is really at the core of Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. We have this really great character-driven and sweet story in the midst of just some grotesquely horrific environments and other characters that have survived in this wasteland-like future. The art throughout is vivid and interesting. I think that there is a more kind of rounded, almost cartoony-like feel to a lot of the illustration style here, but the world building we get visually is absolutely incredible. You feel so immersed in this world, in this sandbox, and I, for one, was riveted. We also have some really cool flash-forward sequences. Again, I won't spoil too much for the sake of this video, but there seems to be a lot going on in this series. I would be curious in the comments, have you read Once Upon a Time at the End of the World? Without going into spoilers, how do you think Jason Aaron landed this plane? If this first volume is any indication, I am really eager to see what the rest of this series holds. This is, again, Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. Next up today, we have Once and Future, Deluxe Edition, Book 1 from Boom Studios. This series was written by Kieran Gillen and illustrated by the incredible Dan Mora. This entire series has concluded, at least thus far, and it is contained across 2 of these deluxe editions. This is, again, the Book 1, and you'll see later in this video the Book 2. This series is a really favorite for me. I honestly didn't have the chance to finish it all the way out until I got these books from Boom. Before then, I did read the first 3 paperback editions, again, a couple years ago, and those 3 books are contained in this one hardcover. What Once and Future is about, it's sort of an Arthurian myth or legend retelling. We're in a world where stories kind of play into the real world in a very concrete way. We have a young man who has a grandmother who is revealed to be a monster hunter, for lack of a better term, and she basically absorbs her grandson into her world to stop an evil resurrected King Arthur from taking over England. Along the way, we have appearances from other sort of mythological British kind of history or lore, and it really just blends fantastically well. If you're a fan of old English myths or British literature, this is a really stellar series. The art we have as well from Dan Mora throughout is absolutely striking, and the work we have from the colorist cannot be understated. Dan Mora's art throughout this book, again, is just a triumph. I cannot tell you how much I loved just falling into this fantastical world. And that is what this series is. It's a modern fantasy that leans heavy into kind of classic British literature and myth and folklore, and it's just a fun series. It's easily not like any other comic book series I've had the pleasure of reading. And yes, I know I read a lot of superhero comics. That's probably the majority of my channel. But when I can, I do like to venture into the more indie or independent comic spaces, and I like to explore other kinds of storytelling that don't just rely on superhero-like fiction. And while there are kind of superheroic-like elements throughout this, essentially this is a high fantasy series. And being a fan of literature as I am, I love to see a lot of little Easter eggs or other kind of lore or source material Gillen played with in this incredible fantasy landscape. The hardcover edition is really nice as well because all of the images are oversized. This is a gigantic book, and to see Mora's art kind of in this size, it's just the way it should be seen. Of course, you don't need to read anything else before reading Once and Future Book 1 to enjoy it, but if you have a little bit of a background on any of the Arthurian, King Arthur kind of legends or stuff like that, it does help kind of make this world feel a bit fuller. But like I said, anyone can just pick this up and enjoy, at least in my opinion. A really great work, and perhaps my favorite work I've read from Kieran Gillen to date. The next entry I want to present on my Boom Studios comic book haul, we have Once and Future Deluxe Edition Book 2 from Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora. This really shouldn't be a surprise. I just talked about the Volume 1. This is the second of the 2-volume set. It is once again an oversized hardcover edition, and this really does land the plane on this incredible franchise. After the events of Book 1, without going into too many spoilers, we do have a bit of a status quo shift up for this team of characters. We have a little bit of a time jump when we start the Volume 2. Nothing too severe, but we definitely find our characters in a different place than we did in the Volume 1. The stakes are heightened, the fantastical elements are just absolutely going into overdrive here, and I am loving it. This series was absolutely captivating, and I was just hoping that Gillen and team could land this plane successfully, and honestly, I couldn't be happier with how this series reached its climax and ultimately its resolution. The art from Mora is again extremely strong here. Some of my favorite artwork that he lent to this series might even be within this volume. Gillen also rolls in more kind of British mythology or folklore into this volume, which was a delight. I again don't want to spoil anything here, but I was grinning from ear to ear at a couple moments throughout this collection. At the end of this book too, we have some series extras, which was fun. We got a little bit from the creators, and if you enjoyed the book 1, I highly recommend the book 2. I think the quality as far as the stories and what we're given at least retains what we got in the Volume 1, if not is a bit elevated. I really did enjoy this book and this series. I was so happy when Boom sent it over, and I finally had a chance to pick it up. For those that were collecting via paperbacks, the hardcover here contains the contents that were included in the Volume 4 and 5 respectively. So this collection is a bit smaller than the Deluxe Volume 1, but it does include the back half of the series. I don't want to speak any more about it because I don't want to spoil anything in this video for those that maybe still have to pick this up, but I will be doing a full review on the channel of this book shortly if I haven't already released it. Again, it'll depend on when I go ahead and release this haul, but certainly stay tuned or check my recent listings if you want to see more on this title. And while I have your attention, if you're enjoying this video and you like other videos like comic book lists, reviews, unboxings, shorts, and more, and you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's keep going with today's Boom Studios comic book haul. Next on my haul video today, Something is Killing the Children Deluxe Edition Book 1 from Boom Studios. This was written by James Tynion IV with art from Werther Dell'Edera. For those that were maybe collecting the paperbacks or looking for an alternate way to go, the Deluxe Edition Book 1 contains the contents of the first 3 paperback volumes. Incidentally, that is how I first read the issues in this book. I used to have the first 4 volumes of the paperback run before I went ahead and got the upgrade here with the Deluxe Edition. What's nice about this is that it does collect the first complete story arc for Something is Killing the Children. So you can go in completely brand new to this franchise and read the first big chunk of storytelling. The story has a beginning, middle, and end, and yes, there are some ongoing character moments or plot threads that we'll see in subsequent collections, but this is a full story in this one hardcover. And I do really like that. I think that's one of the most novel things about this deluxe edition, in addition to this, of course, beautiful oversized format, and that is honestly a real treat as well. The art we have from Werther Dell'Edera is really striking and interesting. There's kind of a grit to the style overall that I like. It's not soft, it's jagged, it's intense, and I just enjoy it. The character models are all unique and fully defined. I love the way Werther does eyes, particularly those of our main character, Erica Slaughter. Now, what is this series for those that maybe don't know anything about it? This is a action horror series. It essentially follows our main character, again, Erica Slaughter, who is essentially a monster hunter who wanders into this town to basically strike after this monster that is killing the local children. We find out through the pages of this first volume that she's part of a larger monster hunting order. The organization may or may not be corrupt, and she's considered something of a rogue, loose cannon kind of agent within this agency. And generally, this book is just a blast. We have some really complex characters and moments, we have some great action sequences, and between the writing and the illustrating, we also have this really interesting, moody tone that really is just eerie and sinister in some ways. I think the threats feel absolutely real, and the resolution on this main plotline is absolutely brilliant, I thought. Now, this is one of the earliest Boom Studios titles I ever had the pleasure of reading. I read that paperback shortly after it came out. I got the first 2 as a giveaway on YouTube some time ago. I really enjoyed it. I had read this, and then I read some of Irredeemable earlier on, but this is what really put Boom Studios on the map for me and made me follow this publisher a bit more closely. And over the years, I've just read more and more titles from them that I thought were a real fun treat. So I was so elated to get some of these books for review recently. In the time since this series first dropped as well, there have been a couple other spin-offs, like I know House of Slaughter has been something that I believe is still ongoing as well. This title is ongoing, so if you've been looking for kind of an action horror series, I think that this is definitely something that could be worth checking into. I did do a full review of this on the channel if you're interested, and let's go ahead and finish out our haul. Last but certainly not least from Boom Studios, I got Something is Killing the Children Deluxe Edition Book 2 by that same creative team, James Tynion IV and Werther Dell'Edera. This is of course from Boom Studios, and this contains the second main plotline for this series. Interestingly enough, we do omit the couple prequel issues that bridge the gap between the first Deluxe Edition and this one. I believe that there is going to be a Deluxe Edition released eventually that has all of the prequel stories in its own deluxe edition. So interestingly, if you were collecting single issues or even the paperbacks, there are some issues missing between book 1 and 2 of this, but story-wise, you don't miss anything since those issues are all flashbacks. So that is something worth noting. The contents of the volume 4 paperback are the issues I'm referring to. I have read that, so I can say you don't miss out on something you need for this book 2. And like I said, I believe they announced they are going to do a prequel kind of deluxe edition collection at some point, because after the contents of this book 2, I think there are more prequel related issues. Anyway, this is the second main story arc, and kind of like the deluxe edition book 1, you get a full complete story within the pages here of this book, which I really liked. So this takes place after the events of book 1. Of course, we have Erica really on the outs with the order she works for, the House of Slaughter, and she's kind of finding herself. She's really rattled from the last mission, and she stumbles into a new town to help a new group of people. And this is something I really believe James Tynion is just incredible at, which is just his characterization. There is something truly episodic to these story arcs that remind me a bit of something like X-Files in a really good way, where you just get to know kind of the local characters, or honestly the television show Supernatural as well, if you like that, where each of these main story arcs feel like an episode where you get to know kind of a new group of local townsfolk, and then you have your central cast of characters that are recurring throughout it all, and you basically get to know these new characters, you like them, but you have our main character coming in and out of the town through the course of the story, and then we go on to the next story, we go on to the next mission, the next group of people that need saving, and really the only recurring characters for the most part are your central cast of characters, like in this case Erica Slaughter, and some of the House of Slaughter. This was a really fun book, though. We have a new threat, a new kind of creature or monster character. We have Erica really pushed to her breaking point, battered around, and just in a really kind of tight spot. I really like kind of the world building we got in this volume as well. I think we really got to go even deeper with some of the House of Slaughter and who Erica is and what her standing is there. And we really get to just push Erica in new ways, which I really like to see. I think the new cast of characters was also really astounding and interesting. I think the villain in this piece was really fun. We also have a subplot or kind of secondary primary plot where Erica's sort of being hunted by someone, and so you have that in addition to the monster of the week sort of, but yeah, it's really fun. I think that this deluxe volume was really similar in quality to the first book. I might give the edge a little bit to the deluxe edition book 1, but this was still a very fun collection that I was delighted to finally make my way through. And like I said, there should be a review of this coming soon if I haven't released it already here on the channel. Okay, and that's going to round out my haul today from Boom Studios. Thank you again to everyone over at Boom for sending these over for review. I had an absolute blast making my way through each of these titles over the last couple weeks, and I've looked forward to reviewing them all. At the time of this recording, I've already reviewed 3 of the 5 here, with the 2 others still forthcoming. That may depend a little bit on when I decide to release this haul, but I hope you've enjoyed the reviews I've released thus far if you had an opportunity to watch them. In the comments, I'd love to hear, have you read any of the books I showcased on this video? Are there other Boom Studios books I should be checking out or you've heard of? I know there are a couple that have released recently I'm interested in, like The Woods Deluxe Edition from James Tynion. That's a series I read in digital maybe a year or 2 ago. Really enjoyed that, and the new deluxe edition they dropped looks fantastic. I also recently read Klaus. If you've never read that, it's sort of a Santa Claus origin story written by Grant Morrison with art from Dan Mora. That's also from Boom Studios, just to name a couple more titles. But yeah, let me know what are some of your favorite Boom books in the comments. I'd love to get some discussions going, and thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, your comment, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks, and have a good one.